seat take?
Nobody's in the seat, then I ain't taking, son.
So this is Sabacc?
Sabacc.
Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to Sabacc the Block, the official first cut Star Wars show. We are here to break down last night's episode of the ACOLYTE. Plus, we're going to take a look back on The Last Jedi, and joining us to do all that, we have Mr. Sean Sullivan in the house. What is up, man?
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. I haven't been talking Star Wars as much lately, so nice to get back in the swing of it. So
yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, I know Sean from the Schmodown, Star Wars trivia. He is a mastermind, a genius of Star Wars knowledge, and he is here to talk more Star Wars with us. How are you feeling, Sean?
I'm feeling good. I know we're not talking about the Acolyte yet, but I gotta say, after last night's episode, this show to me is everything I want these Star Wars shows to be. And the more I think that I know the whole fandom, look, sometimes I guest on Scoundrels Inc. I used to be like a co-host, but I don't have time for that. And I just get on there and I yell at the fans because they need it. I'm not going to do that on your show. Although I feel like your show might be the place to do it. No, knowing you and
maybe
knowing you and RB3, right? Like it's, sometimes you guys aren't afraid to
scold people. Yeah, we
to
scold them all the time. Yeah. Well, this is what we do, man. We scold them.
But I don't understand how anyone could hate this show. Everything is like a love letter to Star Wars in this show.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like I've taken such a step back from talking about Star Wars because it's so toxic and it's so negative. But this show, every time there's a show, I go, maybe I should come back.
It's tough, right? Because this is the perfect show for theorizing, but also it's probably the most like insane. Like no matter what you say, there will be at least 10 people in your comments. You could have like 5 views on the video and there'll still be like 10 comments telling you to like go off yourself and stuff.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's
saying something
awful.
Homophobic or sexist or it's all
terrible.
The worst.
And yet it inspires so much theorizing and so much effort from Star Wars fans who really like to see Easter eggs or theorizing or just seeing where stories will go in the future. So yeah, we're going to get into all that later on when we talk about last night's episode of The Acolyte. But the first thing I want to do, Sean, is talk about your Star Wars story. Everyone has their own Star Wars story as far as what their journey was with Star Wars. So what is your Star Wars story?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like mine is the basic, like, white American who grew up in the 70s. My dad saw Star Wars in white American who grew up in the 90s. I'm not that old. My dad saw Star Wars when it came out in the 70s, and he is a huge Star Wars nerd. Less so now, I guess, now that he's, 60 something. But I mean, it's always been since I was freaking 5, probably. I've had Star Wars crap in my room. Do I say bad words here? I don't know. Yeah. Okay, cool. I mean, like, I'm a 33-year-old man and I've got a Charmander and a bunch of Star Wars crap in my room, in my office behind me. Right. Like, that's it's one of those things where I feel like you don't get away from it. And like, I love to hear the stories of people that they're like, oh yeah, I discovered it when I was a teenager, or I discovered it later. Or like, Laura Kelly, she discovered it when she was in her late 20s. Right.
Yeah.
No, it's for me. Like, I don't remember it being special. It's just always been there. And it's always been part of my DNA. There was the brief time in high school where I thought I was too cool for Star Wars, or, I was.
That's too real. The high school, like there's that 3-year gap in high school where like 3 years of high school, you're like, wait a minute, I'm not allowed to like this stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not cool.
And
Yeah.
because I did the whole like jock football team thing, and then I got out of high school. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna play Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons and watch Star Wars some more.
I swear it's the same for me,
Yeah.
man, when it comes to like my entire life. And then that 4 year, 3 year high school gap as far as being like, wait, I can't like it. It's not cool. And then coming back to it once college starts again, it's definitely real. So you watched the VHS tapes when those came out? I think it was special edition 96.
I wish I still had them. My
Okay.
my mom, God bless her, got rid of all of our VHS tapes, all of our I have 3 sisters, so we had every single Disney VHS, those clamshells, which are now worth God knows what. I had a bunch of old Star Wars toys from a cousin of mine, and last night, randomly looking stuff up, I found one of those toys is now $180, with half the pieces missing. I'm like, Mom, this could have been a nice, car down payment or something, and now it's all gone. But
It's exactly what my mom did.
Yeah.
I had a like crazy collection. I swear, especially prequel era, but also like when they released the special editions, they also re-released a lot of new versions of toys. So I had the Falcon, the big one that's like,
oh yeah,
like 3 feet. I had the Slave One, Boba Fett's. I had a bunch of stuff that would just like blow people away now, and my mom donated all of it away to families in need and to families who had who were living a little bit harsher than we were. And
those are all
those
are all the yoked. Those are all the yoked when they were all the 97 stuff's all the Power of the Force stuff where they look like they're not it's Luke. In your background Dragon Ball Z characters, right? Like
Luke is like ripped and he has his chest is like out here. Yeah.
What is this guy?
I'm still mad at my mom about that. I think it's terrible what she did, but at the same time endearing.
Yeah,
but
she did good for a good cause, right?
Good cause. But also I also had those VHS tapes, the Disney ones. My mom was the biggest Disney fan there was. Like she raised us on Disney. So every single princess movie from like the early, like the late 80s to the, 90s to past it, we had every single VHS tape and they're all gone.
It was actually these bookcases that I have back here were the bookcases in my parents' living room growing up. And there's like a bottom cabinet down there, and it was just from one end to the other, just all the plastic, crinkly clamshell. I don't know why they put those in there. Those are awful, but they're iconic, right? Yeah. So I mean, it was after, especially with like the Schmodown and the rise of like Collider Jedi Council and like the some YouTubers that I'm not going to name because now they all suck, but like back 10 years ago they were YouTubers that you're like, yeah, hey, like look at this, because this guy is singing about Star Wars wearing a blanket on his back, and now he's not as great to watch. It got me back into it, and it like really like reignited my love for it. And now with adult money you buy stupid things. Luckily I've bought very few lightsabers, but actually I've bought no lightsabers. But posters and toys and a resin Mandalorian skull because I needed that on the wall. I don't know.
Star Wars is just a part of your life now, which I find to be amazing. Let's move on to our green Psylop for today.
If you'd only had this little green Psylop.
Our green Psylop for today is all about The Last Jedi, a movie that's incredibly relevant. I didn't even think how relevant it was going to be, considering last night's episode of The Acolyte, which gave me the most Last Jedi vibes. But Sean, I wanted to talk about The Last Jedi with you because I know you're a fan of the movie. And I also want to talk about where the film is now from where it was back then. But the first thing I want to do is ask you, what does The Last Jedi mean to you?
The Last Jedi, I have such a love-hate relationship with, because there is so much good in that movie. There is a section of that movie that I literally want to get tattooed on my body. I have no tattoos. I want to get Luke sitting on the rock with the twin suns setting. I want to get that tattooed on my body because every time I see that scene, every time I think about that scene, I get a little teary-eyed. But I am like, you know, I'm a role-playing guy. So I've dived into all the like West End Star Wars books and all the like old, really technical vehicle manuals and stuff. So the low speed the hyperspace chase, I know everyone said it, but the low speed hyperspace or low speed space chase, whatever you want to call it, it's so hard for me. And the Harry Potter scene I think my problem with my thing with Last Jedi, all of the stuff with Luke and Rey and Kylo and Snoke is this beautiful like love letter to how the Force works and like the religion of the Jedi, and you've got like the symbolism and the sigil at the top of the temple with the little pool of water. It's the Prime Jedi symbol or whatever it is. All of that and the Rian Johnson's weird choices in how to shoot the movie, like when Luke's giving the discussion on what the Force is, and you see the camera shift in that weird way that's so very un-Star Wars that it feels like an old George Lucas trick. That's the stuff I love so much. And then I think about it. I'm like, yeah, what do I love about? And I just go, oh, well, there was that weird Harry Potter horse scene and that weird, you know, so I hope that didn't come through. My computer just beeped. I hope my system sounds are off. Okay, good. Thank God. Anyways, yeah, I love The Last Jedi. It's I think the sequel trilogy is derided in a weird way for being derivative. But I've always thought Star Wars should be derivative. I mean, Star Wars, A New Hope is derivative, right? It's nothing original in A New Hope, right? There's some Jedi is, I guess, an original word, but literally nothing else. Not even the word Sith is original. Like the word Sith is just Gaelic mythology, you know, for evil fairy. Like that's, you know, nothing in Star Wars is original. So that never kills me with The Last Jedi. But it's the weird choices that just go like, yeah, this works for cinema, but does it work for Star Wars? And I don't know. But yeah, it still holds up. I watched it like a couple weeks ago or something. And yeah, I mean, it, you know, even though I've got like little gripes that it's funny, like when I go to talk about it, the gripes come up. And this is where I think like is the problem with the Star Wars fandom. Because we're fans of it, we're so critical of the things we love. You know, yeah, that's my long rant about about The Last Jedi.
How do you feel about the themes of the film? Do you find them to be something that resonated then and now?
Yeah, and actually, I think they probably resonate more now because, you know, for me, I feel like it's a lot of themes of like the failure of our institutions and us trying to go to these institutions for solace or for you know, a savior that isn't there. Not to bring too much politics into it, but hey, this week we had some failure in institutions. And like, you know, that's really what it is that it's Luke coming to grips with, because even though Luke's not our main character anymore, it's Luke very much coming to grips with what Yoda is trying to tell him, that, hey, like failure is meaningful for us to, you know, to learn from. I had this long dissertation I did on Scoundrels one day about how I think the most important, I think it was 7 minutes or 8 minutes of Star Wars, is the Petronaki Arena in Attack of the Clones, because that's the moment the Jedi fall, right? Like that's the moment the Jedi Order fails. It's right then and there. And like Luke isn't there to experience that, and that's very much what the story of the prequels is the failure of the Jedi as an organization, in order for Luke and Yoda and Obi-Wan and then later Rey to turn the Jedi Order from an institution into a religion and a way of life. and it's it's all super relevant to today's like to the Acolyte. This is what I was saying at the top of the show with the Acolyte. They're not the same, but the line Yoda says about failure is the I'm sure you know the line by heart. Failure is the greatest teacher. Something like that.
Yeah.
It really reminds me of the Jackie line from episode 3 of we're not what's happened to us, but we're what we've survived, or we're not what we've lost, but what we've survived.
Yeah.
Like those lines very much feel like a great parallel to me. And I don't know what the themes are of the rest of the movie, but the Luke's themes all like are crazy relevant to me.
Yeah, Ray too, like the combination of both. Yeah,
that's what I mean. Like the Jedi, the whole like the Octo story arc, I should say. And like Luke, Luke proving his hubris to cut Kylo at the end with the Force projection, and I think the DJ like message of like, everyone's bad. I'm like, yeah, that's like, I don't know, it's a little too on the nose for me, right? Like it's a little too like, yeah, of course everyone's corrupt in Star Wars. It doesn't feel like, it feels like you could have, like if you had given that message in Andor, it feels like it's a lot more nuanced and a lot more like handled in a respectful way. Whereas this, it feels like, okay, we get it. You wanted to give like Finn a plot line that matters. And I think that's my other problem with that's my problem with the sequel trilogy, is I think Finn was just wasted, especially after that first trailer.
Very true.
After The Force Awakens, yeah.
Yeah, well, after the first trailer for Force Awakens, you just see like he's so like, I don't know, he steals that freaking trailer.
Yeah, he's so cool.
Hell, you've named your podcast after a John Boyega movie, right? Like, so I mean, I know you guys agree with that, right? It's, I don't know, he's so cool, and I'm hoping that he's in the, I don't think he will be, but I'm hoping he's in the future Rey movie, because goddamn, I want to see him use a lightsaber.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Because he's holding it.
Lego movie is canon.
Yeah, it is. Well, okay, so is it? I don't like.
I don't think it's canon, but in my heart, it's canon.
Because it doesn't feel like it. At least like where the characters are. I guess there's like a whole bunch of time jumpy stuff. I guess that part's not canon, right? But like to me, like where we're seeing Rey and Finn, and Chewie, and I guess that Porg. I don't know. Let's not count that Porg. Where we're seeing them feels to me like that has to be a note from Lucasfilm, right? Like they have to go like, yeah, well, this is what, like, yeah, Finn would be a Jedi, right? Or Finn would be like, I don't feel like you make that choice without Lucasfilm approval, right?
Yeah.
So I think at least that's canon.
Yeah, there's so many layers there on what you touched on. I want to go back to some of the first ones you did, which was the themes of the film, which I do believe to Jackie's line is exactly what I was thinking too, because the movie ends with that scene as far as Rey and Leia saying, we have exactly what we need. Mm-hmm. And the idea of taking a loss, but surviving the loss, because in a way they did lose that confrontation on Crait, right? There was no Luke taking down Star Destroyers and stuff. It was just a one-on-one confrontation with Kylo, but in the end they just ran away and escaped. But that's enough. That's good enough just to have a survival of a monumental moment that's supposed to wipe them out, but the fact that it didn't wipe them out is what allows them to keep going and move on and eventually take down Snoke, the Emperor, all that kind of stuff. But that's the point. The point is, hope doesn't necessarily mean hope in someone who's going to come in and just wreck stuff up and be a nuclear bomb, essentially, for the rebellion or for the resistance. But hope can be surviving another day and surviving a massive event that could have been a life-ending event or just an entire like galaxy-ending event. And surviving that is just as much hopeful as, Luke coming in and taking down like 100 Star Destroyers,
doing Star Killer stuff.
Yeah.
I do think I always find something really funny, and maybe this was talked about when the movie came out. I don't ever remember it being talked about, right? But I know that technically Rey ends up with the books at the end. but those books represent. I always found the one thing that because I think the sequel trilogies don't have a lot of connective tissue, right? Like yes, one is a sequel to the other one, but there's not necessarily a through line between. They felt like they were written separately, right? But there's one really clever connective tissue that I always appreciated from The Last Jedi was the sacred Jedi texts represent the past, the history of the Jedi. And Yoda has to teach Luke something that Kylo already knows. Let the past die, burn it if you have to. And what does Yoda do? Set the damn tree on fire. Right? I don't know if that was intentional, like if they meant to do, like make that parallel, but that was one parallel that I always respected, whether or not it was, again, I don't know if it was intentional because the books do survive, right? I think if the books did burn, maybe it'd be more intentional. But, again, it just goes to this idea that like, it's not the institutions that matter. It's the lessons and the people that the institutions are meant to serve. And I think that's a message we really need right now because, shit's fucked.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that that's kind of what Rey learns in the end too. She wants to have this monumental moment with Ben, and when she realizes that she can't get it in that moment, she feels like it's good enough to have what I have right now. Again, I keep going back to Leia's line, but we have exactly what we need. We have these people on this ship who just survived this catastrophic event is good enough to keep going. We don't necessarily need someone like a Ben Solo to pull a coup and take over the First Order and then tear it down from the inside. We can do it from the outside and from what we have. And her fighting to have Ben being pulled, even though she didn't accomplish that, she realizes like this survival, this people, this community is enough to tear down what might be building, what Ben might be building with the First Order.
And what a great little ragtag group they end up with. Like I like all the random glup shittos in the Resistance. Like they're all so fun. It is weird to me that some of them will pop in, pop out between movies. Again, it's that whole connective tissue thing. But man, I don't know if you read any of the books like that surround that stuff, but there was the book that was it Resistance Rising, I think.
Yeah, Resistance Rising, yeah.
Snap Wexley and Nora and Wedge. Like I don't know. I love this idea that everything connects. And then I'm really let down when it doesn't. But it's like it's always nice when everything connects in this nice neat bow, and like because it very much like that idea of what Leia says that hey, we have everything we need. Ironically, hey, everyone that survived is exactly who's important. It kind of is a little dismissive of the loss of life overall in that, it's the Raddus Leia's flagship? The Raddus, what's the crew capacity of the Raddus? Probably massive, right? A lot of people died. They don't all fit on the Falcon, but that's Star Wars for you. The economies of scale don't work when you think about it. But yeah.
I want to go back to your Finn aspect because I was thinking about this 2 weeks ago. I believe it was 2 weeks ago or last week. There was a conversation on Star Wars Twitter now that Star Wars Twitter is fighting amongst itself and trying to reemerge like one little glimpse of hope. But the side of Star Wars Twitter that has been trying to decipher and trying to push past these really, really bad faith actors. We're having a conversation about over positivity, and I saw a post talking about like, should we be allowed to criticize certain aspects of movies that we don't appreciate or that we don't like, or that simply have problematic themes that maybe we ignore because it is Star Wars? Should we be allowed to do that? And the fact that they were naming and Sean, I don't publicize this too much, but anytime I'm on a podcast, I always do. I'm the biggest Rise of Skywalker guy there is. I'm pretty sure no one can top me. but
I think it's you and Ken Knapsack, and that's it.
Yeah, and it's because we both experienced that whole thing together because we were doing Jedi Council at that time, right when the movie came out. So usually, we're talking about the Last Jedi. Last Jedi fans hate me. They find Rise of Skywalker to be just the worst thing that ever existed, and I love the Rise. I love Rise, and I love Last Jedi. But even I was realizing it, and I thought to myself, it's ironic that a lot of Last Jedi fans feel like this is the perfect Star Wars movie, and they try to put me down for liking Rise of Skywalker. And ironically enough, when John Boyega was very openly critical of what Lucasfilm did to him, and he was specifically talking about The Last Jedi, he literally said, like, one movie just really pushed me to the side, and I can't forgive that. And he specifically named Kelly Marie Tran as well, where I know a lot of people get mad that they kind of pushed her to the side in Rise of Skywalker, and they're absolutely right to be mad about it. But also the fact that John Boyega names her and says, and her too. They also pushed her to the side in The Last Jedi, giving her a ridiculous storyline that we didn't really have much to do. And I think it's okay to say that about a film like The Last Jedi, because it was not great. No, being honest, it wasn't great.
Yeah, and I mean it's really funny because, like, I don't think there's a single one of these Star Wars movies that are flawless. Maybe Empire. I don't think a single one of these Star Wars movies is flawless. I mean, even Empire. Like, as a kid, I found Empire so boring. After Hoth, I'm like, I'm bored. Give me the movie with the teddy bears, right?
Yeah.
You know, none of them are perfect or even like remotely close. Ironically, I think the movie that does like the whole Star Wars picture the best is the one everyone hates the most, which is Attack of the Clones. You know, I hate to go back to Attack of the Clones, but like, it does the Star Wars thing. It does everything a Star Wars movie needs to do. It, like, I don't know, maybe the like actual Battle of Geonosis is a little out of place, but like, you've got the space battles, you've got the weird bounty hunters, you've got the intrigue subplot, you've got the big action set piece, and you've got the cut between one set piece to another, and you've got the romance. And as much as we want to pretend that Star Wars never focused on the romance, again, look at Empire Strikes Back. There's a whole lot of rom-com scenes in there with Han and Leia. So yeah, I think that there is an issue with the overpositivity. I've been moderating for a big Star Wars channel for their live streams because they fired all their moderators a couple years ago and then realized with the current crap going on, they're like, I need help. I'm like, okay, I gotcha. There is so much, just people come in and they just say, you know, Star Wars gay. Like, yeah, Star Wars is gay. Get over it. Star Wars has always been gay. Like, it's always been political. It's always been gay. It's always been queer. Like, get over it, you know? And whether or not explicitly it was, it's always been for people within those sort of communities, right? Like,
yeah,
it's always been for Star Wars has always been a tale of the marginalized, right? I don't think Lucas is the best person to be telling those stories, right? Like, upper middle class guy who, you know, raced muscle cars as a hobby and went to USC film school. Like, he is not saying this from experience, but was very much like, he's still alive. But, you know, he was very much, when he was making these movies, like, this was stuff that mattered to him.
Yeah.
And stuff he wanted, you know, talking about corporatism and the failings of our political climate. And I don't know, it's so crazy that there's a subset of Star Wars fans, and I'm not going to say they're fake fans because they're 100% fans, but there's a subset of Star Wars fans who see any sort of shifting in the political message in Star Wars, because it is shifting. We're now being a lot more vocal about things that we probably should have been vocal about 15 years ago. I don't know how they're so shocked by this, right? Like, yeah. I mean, I guess it's our political climate where it is, but like that blows me away, right? That blows me away.
That's, to be honest, I feel like that's what it is. Yeah, I feel like I have like a PhD in this whole area of the way the fans have turned and all this stuff, because I saw it happen in real time, and I'm sure you did too. You just told me you were following these kind of channels back in the day, and I was too. 2014, 2013, build up to to Force Awakens, this whole downfall, up and down kind of thing that we experienced. A lot of people tend to forget it stemmed from 4chan. Yeah. And 4chan is literally like, that's where it came from. Like, these guys came from 4chan, then went into the YouTube area. Then YouTube algorithm was like, this is it. This is the one we need to promote the most. And the YouTube algorithm did their work. But these guys are all, it's in that pipeline. And I think a lot of people forget that or want to ignore it. But I don't think we should. I don't think we should ignore it. And I feel like that has led to a lot of issues, but I personally feel like we shouldn't belabor on it and just be focused on it, because I do feel like it's such a bad faith, and it literally is discrimination. And I just don't feel like there's necessarily like, why are we keep retweeting these people who have said so much discriminatory things in their past and have literally told you, I don't like Star Wars because there's black people in it, and are now complaining about fire and space or other bullshit or just bricks to kind of distract you. Yeah. It's like, can we move on from these people? Stop retweeting them like they're good faith, like they're saying like, well, actually, can someone explain to me? Like, they're not saying that. They're just telling you more stuff to add to their hate.
Let me jump in here real quick, and I know it's already 30 minutes deep, so I'm be real quick with it. But I think there's two things with it. I think it is a mixture of 4chan people, but it's also people who are born in the 80s who are locked into like this nostalgia thing, who, watched the original trilogy in theaters and just don't want to see any changes made to the universe like whatsoever. That's a lot of like where the complaining started, and then the 4chan people jumped in and like co-opted that, I feel like, too.
But that was prequel era though. That was prequel. Those people hated the prequels. No, I remember because I lived.
Yeah, exactly. But they hate everything new. And they hated the sequel trilogy too, and they hate the ACOLYTE. Like, I don't want to name drop, but I love my boy Jeremy Johns. Jeremy Johns is my guy, for real. I love him. But he puts out a negative video about ACOLYTE every week, and he's not coming at it from like a, he's literally. He's hating the hate for sure.
Because it gets views, because it gets clicks. That's what it is.
Yeah, but he's also some kid, he's the guy who wore the Star Wars blanket like in his videos too. Like he holds on to it like a childhood thing, and they're like ruining his childhood. That's what some people perceive. And then real quick on The Last Jedi, I 100% agree with y'all on the John Boyega thing. I actually, speaking of a couple weeks ago, y'all both say I rewatched it a couple weeks ago. I rewatched it on my birthday when I was in Catalina Island. And for a long time, when I first watched it in theaters, I was 50-50 on The Last Jedi. I liked a lot of it, didn't like a lot of it. And then I kind of put on rose-colored glasses, pun intended, and thought, it was better, the themes. And like you said, the themes are good. The thing that stood out to me is the symbol of the Jedi, right? It's kind of like a symbol of Christianity, like how you're not really supposed to take the literal word-for-word interpretation of some things that are written thousands and thousands of years ago, but you're supposed to take the idea, the messages, the symbols of it, and carry those on in your personal life. I thought Luke portraying that was excellent. And I thought the whole Luke, Rey, Kylo, Yoda storyline, phenomenal. The Canto Bight stuff, and I thought it was unwatchable when I was in theaters, and rewatching it again on TNT was even more unwatchable, because it's like they put it there and then they put the commercials in it, so it's like you can't even fast forward through it. And it's unbearable. And the stuff with Poe and the new general who's played by Laura Dern, I thought all that stuff was I thought all that stuff was very fascinating. And I think on paper it really works really well. But in the storyline where there's 3 different storylines going on all at once, the Return Empire Strikes Back did the same thing. 2 multiple storylines going on at once, but they juggled 2 storylines. This juggles 3 storylines, and one of the storylines is just vastly inferior to like the other 2. So that's just really what makes it. And then again, with the Holdo and Holden and Poe stuff, it's good, but I don't know, maybe I'm just an old school misogynist, or maybe I just didn't love Laura Dern's character or whatever, but it felt so random. It felt so like out of place, where I felt like there was so much potential for Leia to have those kind of opportunities. And I know Leia was part of that dynamic, but I feel like Leia should have been the central key part of that dynamic. And then yeah, Canto Bite's unwatchable. The Benicio del Toro stuff, I actually thought that was cool, and I think that's, you know, I would like to see them do more of those kind of misdirects in Star Wars too. But man, it's like, and Rose Tico, again, I'm not trying to hate on the actress Kelly Tran. She's phenomenal. But this is literally a product of Rian Johnson's fetish. If you watch Rian Johnson's movies, every movie has an Asian, you know, an Asian girl like as like a love fetish kind of situation. Every one of his movies, every one, except for the first Knives Out, but he brought it back for Knives Out too. So it's like this is his thing. He just loves a little Asian quirky girl who's like like he wants to be a scene stealer.
I was like, who would? She's literally in Star Wars. She's Jess Pava.
Yeah.
I love Jess Pava.
I love Jess Pava. Don't disrespect Jess Pava.
No. I'm just, and when Rian Johnson puts an Asian girl in his movies, be worried. And I love Rian Johnson movies, but be worried.
That's so funny. It's, you know, to go to the Holdo thing, because I didn't want to say anything about that, so I'm glad you did, because Holdo shows up first in Leia, Princess of Alderaan, or something like that. What a killer character, just this like very like punk rock kind of, you know. It's not, again, the movies come before the books. I get it. But when you read the book leading up to the movie, and then and then you see a different character, it's very strange. Yeah. Because I agree with you so much, RB3, because it feels like that's such a good potential for a storyline. But Laura Dern feels like she's doing it to be, I don't know what word
bossy.
I want to use. Like, yeah, to be boss. Like she's doing it. She's like, I'm the boss. Stop questioning me. Not like, hey, there's tactical reasons we should do this, right?
Yeah, it didn't come across perfectly. There's a couple moments where I feel like it had landed, but there's definitely some where I was like, this definitely feels like it's like, this is my subordinate, so stay in your lane kind of attitude, which didn't help. And I know where they were coming from with that, like you said. And yeah, maybe it is a little bit of an internal misogyny, RB3. I feel like that can happen. That it feels like it's very much like, I don't know. It feels that way, especially with the design of her character as well. Her wearing this nice flowy dress instead of something a little bit more tactical that portrays that legendary Admiral Holdo that they want to kind of go for. So yeah, that all plays into it.
It's kind of fun. It's not funny. It's kind of morbid too. The fact that like this would have been our last chance to get Carrie in like a role as General Organa.
Yeah.
And it's shortchanged by that, right? And like they had no idea, right? It's so ironic in hindsight that she gets blown out the window the way she does,
and then starts flying like Mary Poppins.
I love that scene, by the way. That scene, no one's gonna take that one from me. I cheered in theaters,
but it is fun. Yeah. It's really awkward. Yeah. But it's so Star Wars.
It's very Star Wars. But I got to say real quick, just to clarify that, because I do feel like maybe it's just because my brain is so inundated with behind the scenes stuff and all this kind of jazz that goes into my sequel love and my sequel trilogy love. I do feel like they felt like there was a lot of limitations to where Carrie Fisher can go. That's the vibes I got from a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that I saw, where they did feel like they almost had to reaccustom her to the cameras, to the acting, to the performance of a Leia, that coached her up with literal acting coaches and stuff. So I did feel like when I saw all that, I felt like, ooh, did they feel like maybe she's a little too rusty to carry that role of a Holdo? And I think that's where they were coming from. At least that's what I read from everything that I saw behind the scenes. But I still 100% agree it should be General Leia. And I think that's why I appreciate The Rise of Skywalker so much, because they do try and emphasize that a little bit more, even if it is in a legendary kind of like off-screen kind of way. Yeah. So, But yeah, I agree with you, RB3, when it comes
I
to.
mean, they did their best on Rise of Skywalker. They did their best, right? Like they worked with what they had, and it it kind of works. Few lines that are awkward, but whatever. All right, I'll quit going down weird tangents.
Let's move on to Full Sabacc for today.
Full Sabacc.
Full Sabacc is all about last night's episode of The Acolyte. The episode title was Teach, Currupt. Sean, first thing I have for you is, what did you think of the episode?
It's great. It's great. What a great idea to have this nice, like, because last week's episode was so
intense.
Much. Yeah, it was so intense. And generally I'm pretty, like, I would generally be pretty negative on an episode like this. Like, there's a few revelations, there's a few hints dropped for like future stuff, but it works so well with the like come down from 7 Jedi getting murdered. Previously, I love Khmer so much, the Stranger, whatever we're calling him. Oh my God, he's like my favorite. I don't want to say Sith because we don't know for sure that he's a Sith. He's my favorite dark side user in Star Wars at this point. So if he wants to go shirtless, bathing and chewing up scenery and, throwing sex appeal to convert people to the dark side, go for it. Yeah, overall, I loved it. I like there's some weird subtle nods to The Last Jedi and to Plagueis and to all kinds of weird. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, let's move to my notes. My notes, I have Osha and Chimere, then I have Sol and May, and then I have Venestra and the Council, or just the Jedis or whatever. So let's start off with what I think is the best part of the episode, and I agree with you, which is the Osha and Chimere stuff, or Stranger stuff, whatever you want to call him. Yeah, what did you think learning more about his character, his motivations, his intentions?
I don't think we've learned anything.
Yeah, I know, but
because here's the thing, right? So, did you watch have you seen A Good Place?
I haven't. No.
Okay, watch A Good Place. It's amazing. He's in it. I'm gonna spoil The Good Place a little bit. Heaven, and you're like, Andres, glad you're here. You lived this life. These are all the children you saved from this burning building. These are all these things, and you're in the back of your mind going, I didn't do any of that. So basically the plot is there's 2 Andres Cabreras that died at the same time. One went to heaven, one didn't. But they got switched. So Manny Jacinto plays very much this same character in that show, except not like evil, just an idiot. So like where we see him in the first couple episodes, he's playing like that same bumbling fool sort of character. And then where we see him with Sol last episode is and when he's got the helmet on and when he's fighting is not the same person that we see in this episode. We've seen 3 different chimeras, and I don't think any of them, like, he's so intentional. I think the character is so intentional with how he approaches who I'll call his victim or his target, right? To get what he wants out of them. And yeah, I love it. Like, we know that he's a Jedi. I think there's a pretty clear, getting into theories, but we see his scar. There's another thing in this episode that they're kind of like, oh, that's intentional. Like, you don't, Schrodinger's or Chekhov's, not Schrodinger. Schrodinger's the cat in the box. Chekhov's the gun. You don't Chekhov gun that without, doing it intentionally. Yeah, it's interesting seeing Osha, how quickly she's falling. Because it's not like it's not subtle. Like, she's like, okay, yeah, hot man, brooding, says some clever things that are all correct. He hasn't been wrong about anything yet. Yeah.
It's very much it's literally just attraction where she's like, wait a minute, all right, I'm questioning stuff now. Maybe the Jedi were wrong. I don't know. When it comes to seeing him and being attracted to him, I really do feel like that's part of it as well. And him being supposedly right, because he's obviously setting that whole scene up, but him being supposedly vulnerable and him allowing her to get his lightsaber and all that kind of stuff, allowing her to kill him if she wants to, is something else that she kind of internally takes in as like a respect thing, where she's like, ooh, he let me kill him if I wanted to, letting her fulfill that desire that she would want to have. All that stuff is in there, which I find to be really fascinating for sure. When it comes to his character, I'm curious what you think of when he says, when she asks, what do you want? And he says the power of two. Do you feel like that's a Sith thing, a witch thing, a dyad thing?
I think it's all the same, right? Like, I think, and that, and it goes back to, like RB3 was saying, the importance of that symbol on top of the temple. When we talk about balance in the Force, like, balance implies that there are two sides acting against each other. I have no idea, because I don't think we can talk about this episode specifically without talking about Plagueis. And I don't know if have you read Plagueis?
I have, but it's
been a while, right? There's so many things in this episode that are callbacks to Plagueis. And I don't know if we just want to call a spade what it is now. So Leslie confirmed that this is not Octo.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that it looks very much like Octo. In Plagueis, there's a planet called Baldemnik.
Baldemnik, yeah.
And it's where Tenebris and his Padawan, Venomous. Tenebris and Venomous find Cortosis on this planet that is described as an ocean world with rocky outcropping islands. Very much fits the description, right? Well, so Venomous, anyways, this should fall within the timeline where we don't know exactly when this show's set, right? It's set 100 years before. We also don't know for sure that they're going to stick to anything from Plagueis, except for the few things that they have canonized. So like Plagueis being immune or a moon or whatever, however you want to pronounce it, is canon. But Tenebris and Venomous being Bith is not canon. So Chimere could be one of them, and this could be the setup for that, right? And I know that we've probably got predictions and theories talking about it later, but this is where, like, building off the whole thing of, like, he's just lying about who he is. What was the question?
His intentions as far as power of two.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I lost myself in where I was going. I don't know. As far as his intentions go, I don't know if he's either a part of this Darth Bane lineage, the rule of two, leading up to Tenebris and then Plagueis and then Palpatine, or if he's his own thing, right? Because it's possible he's just a fallen Jedi. Or I had a weird theory last week about him being Soul's brother, and Soul leaves for the Jedi Order, so he's jealous, so he goes out to find knowledge, and then he ends up on Morband or Korriban, whatever it's called now. Morband, I guess it's called Morband now. He ends up on Morband, gets a bunch of Sith knowledge, and then goes and does Sithy things, right? And then when I saw this episode and there's Octo, and I'm like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, I was kind of right. I just was wrong about what planet he goes to. I bet this is going to lead to my theory. And then once they show the Bane of Cortosis, I'm like, oh, no, it's not the right thing. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. There's so much, there's so much there that it could be anything.
Yeah, I feel like they set it up on purpose. I do think it's I'm always going to mispronounce it, Baldenmic. And I do think you're right. Obviously, Leslie confirmed that this was an island that is rich with cortosis, so that already heavily implies that. And I do agree with you as far as like taking the Plagueis lineage, but just switching that out for a chimere or for a stranger, where instead of Tiberius or Venomous, you have chimere in there somehow, just as far as timelines go. And I do think that makes a lot of sense, considering that this will lead to Plagueis eventually. But at the same time, like you, I also think it could very much possibly go a completely different direction. He's a dark force user, nothing to do with the Sith, who tries to do his own thing. And whether he succeeds or not, I know the whole Ren theory has been a really popular one. I like it. I like that theory. I think it'd be cool, but that would definitely skew away from anything Sith. So there's definitely two avenues that he wants to go on. But I do feel like when he says power of 2, it's very clearly implying more power, I guess, is what he's looking for in general, because I thought he was just going to say power, but when he says, I want the power of 2, I was like, okay, so this is definitely someone who wants to increase his power as much as possible, which I find to be pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and I mean, it could mean, because, so I talked about this on Scoundrels. Sith in Legends, we don't know as much about them in canon, but in Legends, the Sith Order are very parasitic. They're very much like the Romans, where they kind of just took from other cultures and then integrated into their own culture and went, yeah, this is ours now, right? So this whole idea of the rule of 2 or the dyad or the power of 2, like, to me, they're all the same thing. At least they all serve the same end, right? Like, they all serve the end to make either one of the collective or the collective not more stronger, either one of the collective or the collective stronger, right? So the rule of 2 very much is like pitting the powers against each other so that one of them comes out on top. We don't know as much about the power of 2, but it's this idea of combining forces to become more powerful. The end result is still the same, so when he says that, I'm wondering if that's verbiage, like if that's wording he got from May, if like he started talking about the rule of 2 or we're stronger together, and May went, oh, that's the power of 2 that my mothers used to speak of, right? And so then he's twisting that against Osha because he's got that wording. It's like, so that's kind of how I read it. But ultimately, I think it's all like, it's very much like a thing in Star Wars. You talked about I think it was the anime Visions, Star Wars Visions. There's the twins episode there. We have Luke and Leia. We have Jason and Jaina in Legends, and then we have Kylo and Rey in canon. That while they're not twins, I think the dyad thing was presented to go, no, this is Jason and Jaina. Like, they're not Jason and Jaina, but like they're filling the same function as Jason and Jaina. And I do think that Disney Lucasfilm has done a good job of like throwing a bone to the fans of Legends with Thrawn and with, especially Leslie's done a wonderful job of it. So like, I think the dyad was always meant to be like, at least in my head, it was always meant to be like, no, this is the Jason and Jaina story told from a different angle. Right. So I don't know that I guess I don't know that I see a difference between the rule of 2 and the power of 2 or the dyad, in the same way that like when Mother Anastasia, Mother Anastasia is talking about how the weave works. The thread. The weave is Dungeons and Dragons Forgotten Realms. Sorry. The thread works is the same, like when she's talking about it, it's identical to how Obi-Wan talks about the Force, right?
Yeah.
There's no difference in what it is. It's just a different perspective on looking at it. And then you have Chimere's whole idea of like, I just want to exist. which very much echoes what, not Mother Anastasia, but the other mother whose name also escapes me. Coral. Like very much echoes what Mother Coral was saying as far as like the Jedi don't want us to exist. They don't, we're not allowed to practice our religion. So yeah, that's my.
Yeah, I think it could all line up to that, which I feel like is very clever in a way to tap into legends and to try to explain everything inside this TV show when it comes to that. I do feel like that's incredibly fascinating and interesting for sure. And the way Kymir is able to explain the dark side in his own way, and he says semantics, I also thought was really funny. Yeah, it's all very fascinating, and I think it lines up directly. The only other thing I have here is Kymir, obviously, let's just get to it. Kymir mentions a former master. He mentions he was a former Jedi, implies heavily that his master betrayed him or somehow discarded him. And then we see later on Venestra do some kind of shady shit. And I immediately started to click in this. And then I went on Twitter, and a lot of people were already on my same page. I was like, wait a minute. They're really doing this to High Republic fans. They're making Venestra like bad. And I know Star Wars Explained, Alex also just did a video about it today, talking about like, wait a minute, is she the bad guy of the show? Like, she might be the bad guy of the show. What do you think of that whole idea?
So I think it's definitely like, I think they're trying to lead us down that path.
Yeah.
It's really cool. The show's done a good job of not like baiting us, like people pegged pretty early on that like, oh, Kymir is probably the bad guy. No, and then they went, no, that's too obvious. It can't be him. Right. But I think that I like that it was too obvious, right? They're not trying to trick us. They're not trying to pull like a fast one on us. So it's kind of weird if they suddenly then decide to with Vernestra, or maybe it does make sense for them to do it suddenly with Vernestra. I think she's probably his old Jedi master, if what he's saying is true about being a former Jedi, but I don't think she's like a dark side user. Alex has some more sapient points than I would about the High Republic, but to my understanding, they're in the most recent High Republic book, Temptations of the Force, which I haven't read yet, but to my understanding, there are things that happen with Vernestra in that book that would make her lose faith in the Jedi Council. So that does kind of make sense that she's like doing this sort of like pushing away from like, let's keep this to ourselves and deal with it ourselves. But I don't know, like that's just what I'm hearing. I've only read a couple of the High Republic books, and she seems like just a nice, sweet little girl in those books. So I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I don't. There's a whole bunch of issues if she is a Sith or a dark side user, because as much as I don't think Kymir breaks canon, people were really concerned that like, oh well, Kymir being there, and then what Ki-Adi-Mundi says in Phantom Menace, where well the Sith had been extinct for 1,000 generations or whatever. I don't think that is a problem. But I think if you have Vernestra in the Jedi Temple and being a Sith, I don't think Disney or Leslie or anyone's going to do that, right?
I mean, they could. I mean, I really do feel like if I was a High Republic fan, which I'm not, I'm also like you. I think I've read the first book and that's it. If I was, I'd be mad because this is a character that apparently is beloved, very beloved, and seems to have a lot in the books. Mm-hmm. And it really does seem like they're leading her down this path. Now, it doesn't necessarily, like in my mind, it doesn't have to be she's a dark side force user Sith. I see it more as she's like the Master Yord level up, right? Where she, by the book, kind of Jedi who's like ignoring humanity to value the survival of the Jedi, where she will brush stuff under the rug and try to cover it up. And maybe at the end we learn she was Chimera's master. She discarded him. She thought he was dead and got rid of him, but now he's coming back to haunt her. And what she's trying to do is cover it up as best she can. And that's also a flaw of the Jedi, is this kind of cover up attitude as far as we are perfect and flawless. We cannot let the Senate know that we have these issues amongst ourselves, or the Senate know that I personally try to get rid of my ex-Padawan, and made up this whole story, and now he's coming back to haunt me. Like, I can't let them know. I'm gonna cover it up. I still feel like that makes her the villain of the show in a way, the bad guy of the show, without making her a Sith Lord or something like that. I think she represents more like the corporate, cover-ups kind of attitude.
Yeah, if we do end up on that path, I'm sure that everyone's got their characters that they love. That's their character, right? I'm sure people that Vernestra is like their character would be grumpy with that. But I think as a fan of the way you tell stories, and I don't want to say the hero's journey, because it's not the hero's journey. It's almost like someone failing on the hero's journey, right? I am so into that if that's where we end up, right? If she ends up just being this flawed Jedi Master, then again, it goes back to what I was saying, where this show is so so very Star Wars, right? It's the flaw in the Jedi and in the system that is the Jedi Order leads to this corruption and this failing. That's great, right? That's what I want out of these characters. I also think it could just be a total bait. They could just be finally well, we've got 2 episodes left. Let's bait and switch them, right? Let's make them think it's Vernestra, and then we'll have a Bith with a red lightsaber walk out at the end of the movie, or at the end of the show, and it's play.
That'd be hysterical. Let's move on to speculations, predictions, Sean, and then we'll move on to Squad Up.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just ready for I don't aside from the whole idea of I think that they're going to loop Chimera into either the Knights of Ren, which has been covered to death, or they're going to loop Chimera into the Tenebrous Plagueis line. I think he's replacing Darth Venomous in that picture, which was Tenebrous's Padawan, that Plagueis captures, tortures, and then tests all his midichlorian science on. That's who he does all of his the whole idea of the Jedi manipulating life. That all comes from what Plagueis did to Darth Venomous. That's what I think is the most likely. There's so much cool stuff with Soul. I love the character of Soul. I think that it's cool. He very much reminds me of Qui-Gon, but a little bit more of a flawed Qui-Gon. I don't think he's they're trying to make us think someone else is evil, and I don't think anyone else that we currently have on screen is evil. Yeah,
it's tough because I do feel like they're eventually going to show us, maybe even next episode, the flashback as far as what actually happened on Brendok. And also, I keep going back to what Chimera said last episode, where he said, even after what he did to you, you still defend him, or something like that. And I was like, that heavily implies that he had an active part in whatever happened on Brendok. I'm assuming May is the one who told him that story from her perspective. So we'll see May's perspective maybe being told back to Soul, and Soul telling her. Maybe somehow that's how they do it. Because that's kind of where they left off on this episode. But either way, I'm like you, man. I just can't wait. 2 more episodes is insane. I'm really enjoying it so far, but I really do feel like they low-key have to stick the landing in order to make all this work, because if they don't, then it feels a little bit disappointing. But I don't feel like it's building up to a disappointment, so that's good.
Yeah, it's funny. This is the show I think that needs to stick that landing the most.
Yes.
Obi-Wan didn't stick the landing, but it's fine. Overall, the show's fine. Actually, I think Obi-Wan probably did stick the landing, but they didn't stick the run up to the jump to get you right. Obi-Wan had its flaws. Andor is a flawless show. No notes, no flaws. Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian both have their flaws. but like it doesn't matter when those fuck up because they're so like they kind of just don't matter, right? They're just fun.
Yeah.
Whereas
It's
this
more-
show,
yeah.
like this show feels like it's like leading to something. It feels like the sum of the parts have to matter in the end. So I think you're right. Like I never thought of it like that. That like this show needs to stick the landing more than anything else.
Yeah. And we'll see if they do these next coming 2 weeks. Let's move on to Squad Up with Squad Leader Ace for this week. Now, for Squad Up with Squad Leader Ace, we have a scenario that I'm putting you in inside the Star Wars universe. You get to pick any character from Star Wars canon, and we can get this going. So for this episode, you are a rebel general in charge of a massive assault against an Imperial base located on an industrial part of this planet. The mission is of great importance, and it requires an effective team. You need, number one, a military strategist. As general, your biggest focus is establishing a plan of attack, and you need a sharp mind to help you create that. Number two, you need a scout, someone who will scope out the base and deliver crucial information. Number three, you need a battalion of creatures. You have something the Empire won't expect, and that is the herd of powerful creatures that can wreak serious damage. Number four, a Force user. You need someone who can do serious damage using the Force. And number five, you need an undercover officer, someone who is used to fooling the Empire and is very, very good at it. Sean, let's start off with your military mastermind strategist that is helping you come up with this plan.
So I love this. I love this format, by the way. Rex. It's got to be Rex. There's no one better than Rex. There's probably a lot of people better than Rex, but I like Rex a lot. Yeah. So Captain Rex, CT, whatever. You know what? Edit in me saying his CT number because I don't know it.
Is it 6775?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Is it really? No,
I think so.
That's off the top of my head, but I'm probably wrong. I'm actually curious now because I want to. It's either that or in reverse. Either 7567 or 6775. Oh, I was right.
There you go.
7567. So just reverse it. That's a great choice. Rex is definitely a genius when it comes to that kind of stuff. I gotta do it. I gotta pick her, and I know I always pick her, but I just gotta do it. I'm picking Harrison Dula as my military mastermind. I feel like she's smart, she's capable, she's on her feet. She does it multiple times in many episodes of Rebels, especially Rebels season 3 finale. I feel like that's a big Harrison Dula kind of moment where she's able to decipher certain ways to escape and to survive and to move on and try to avoid the Thrawn power that he has over people. So who is your scout?
Okay, so I feel like I forgot this one. I know what one of my answers was, so I'm just gonna go with that one because that's the one off the top of my head. Sabine. I feel like Sabine is the good, right? She's got a jetpack, she's quick, she could spray paint her armor, blend in or something. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like Sabine's a good choice for that. I don't really have any honorable mentions for that one, but I feel like Sabine's the right choice.
No, Sabine's a great one. Yeah, I feel like the jetpack would help a lot. Plus, she's super good at avoiding attention. I think she's really good at that, and she mastered that, obviously, in Rebels. I'm going with my first thing that came to my head, the first guy who came to my head, and that's Crosshair. Not just because he can literally scope out with his scope, just as simple as that, but also because he is a very embattled veteran who really knows what he's doing when it comes to these type of situations. So I feel like any information that he would deliver to me would be well explained, accurate, and just by the book. So I feel like Crosshair would be a great scout to have. What are your battalion of creatures? You can pick any creature.
So, I always struggle with this pronunciation as far as, is it wreak havoc or wreck havoc?
I don't know.
Because I think it's wreak havoc,
It
which
might
is
be.
why I'm picking a battalion of reeks.
That's perfect.
Just because, I mean, yeah, you go with Gundarks. My second choice was Rathtars.
Yeah.
But I think it's got to be Battalion of Reeks.
I mean, I feel like last episode we had another creature choice. It was like, what creature would you want as like your pit bull, your like intimidation creature? And my guest picked the Acolyte, and I picked the Nexu.
There you go. That's the trifecta.
So we're going full circle here with this one, but I feel like that's a great one. I was actually thinking about along the same lines as you are, like a big, massive creature who can just deliver a ton of damage. I was thinking of Rontos. Just giant Rontos, absolutely just, you can be riding on top of them. Just Jawas on my team so they can help me master them in some way.
They're better all terrain because they got those long ass legs.
Yeah, you know what else would be dope? Oh man, see, this is our Star Wars trivia coming back and not coming back. The ones from Phantom Menace, the one that Boss Nass rides in the parade.
Oh, the big giant one. Yeah, I don't know what it's called, but yeah,
it's
the
like
big dinosaur.
Pally diapers, something like that. It was something crazy.
Adam Witt would know.
That one. That's another good one that I feel like would. But officially, I'm picking my Ronto. So how about that?
The funny answers, the little roly poly ones from Naboo. The Attack of the Clones that they're all rolling around with.
Yeah,
that's the funny answer because they're like the crappy version of Freaks and Rontos.
For real. Let's move on to your Force user.
All right, this one I struggled because again, I really like Chimere, whatever, the stranger. He's really grown on me. But I feel like it's too early for me to pick him. And then I was like, okay, but I also really like Kanan. But I've already picked a Rebels character. I've technically already picked 2 Rebels characters. So let's go with Cal Kestis.
Nice.
Because
that's RB3's favorite.
He is a crazy motherfucker.
Cal Kestis.
I love that guy. I was looking at, I bought a 3D printer last year, and last night I was looking at 3D printing a bunch of Cal Kestis lightsaber parts. I'm like, no, I got other stuff to do. I can't do that.
Yeah, I'm definitely going along the lines you are as far as having someone who is powerful and who will, just deliver a lot of damage. I'm going with the best general there is. That is General Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Hell yeah.
Anyone who stands against them will fall. Obi-Wan is just an absolute monster, and I feel like, again, expertise in battle, extremely powerful in the Force. Obi-Wan would be my choice for Force user. Finally, Sean, who are you picking as your undercover officer?
All right. So I want to get his full name right. So bear with me, because I was, I spent a lot of, this was the hardest one for me. So I'm a big Boba Fett fan. I'm a big Mandalorian fan. I wanted to pick one of them. I got Sabine in there, so it's okay. I have a dark horse here. So I was thinking, okay, we go Sinjar Rath Velas from the Aftermath trilogy. We can go Zam Wessel, be a real good choice. But I'm going to go with Thermoculus, Kristen Volt, Scissor Punch. Scissor Punch. So if you don't know, for some reason we've decided that all aliens in Star Wars just live 300-400 years. Yeah. Therm Scissor Punch famously helped defend Maz Kanata's castle on Takodana alongside Dexter Jetster. Like, sometime during the High Republic. Look, I don't know. This was on Wikipedia. I just thought it was really funny to pick Therm Scissor Punch.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's the one who's supposed to be in disguise and supposed to be not noticeable.
Yeah.
It's like the Empire won't see him coming. I'm pretty sure they will.
For anyone that doesn't know what Therm Scissor Punch looks like, he is a lobster-looking MF. I don't know.
But he's a Sabacc legend. That's why you.
No, he's awful. Actually, that's also on Wikipedia. He's apparently awful at gambling.
Yeah, you're right. But that's where I know him from, at least. So shout out to Therm Scissor Punch as your undercover officer. The one I'm picking is the one that I felt like that's the guy to do it. Like, no matter what, this is just what he does. And that's Ezra Bridger. Ezra Bridger impersonating an officer like he usually does, going undercover, giving me the info. And in case anything happens, I got a man on the inside who is going to pull out a lightsaber anytime anything goes bad. So Ezra is my choice.
You would think at a certain point they'd have one of those signs that they have at the liquor store. Like, don't sell if you see this man, right? Don't let him in the store or whatever. I feel like at a certain point those would be all over Imperial bases for Ezra.
Oh, yeah,
or
that's
Jabba.
True. That's true. But at the same time, it's like he can blend in because he's just another dude.
Yeah.
But that works. Do you watch House of the Dragon, Sean?
I do. I haven't watched this episode yet.
Oh, okay. I can't spoil it.
But I know. So I do.
Oh, you do
that
know.
They like. Well, I know that there's like. I keep hearing that there's some corollaries between Star Wars and House of the Dragon every episode.
Yes.
So whatever it is, I'm excited.
It's so Star Wars, it's not even funny. I was like, what is this episode of Rebels? Yeah, it's hysterical. Let's run back your team, Sean, before we take off for tonight. So first off, your military strategist is
Captain Rex, Commander Rex, Captain Rex. He's both. Both are correct.
He's both, yeah.
Okay.
Your scout.
Sabine Wren. Your
battalion of creatures.
Oh, those are the Reeks. Good old Geonosian Reeks. They're not from Geonosis, wherever the hell they're from.
Your force user.
Calvin Kestis.
And your undercover officer.
Yeah, that was hold on, what was it? It was Thermoculus Kristen Volt Scissor Punch.
Nice. And my military strategist would be Hera. My scout is Crosshair. My battalion of Rontos, my force user is Obi-Wan, and my undercover officer is Ezra Bridger. Sean Sullivan, thank you so much for being here today, man.
Thanks for
Where can
having
everyone
me.
find you?
Yeah, I'm working on I've been putting out, if you're a Dungeons and Dragons fan, I have a new D&D channel called Rookies and Rulebooks. I say new, it's not technically new, but it's newish. Rookies and Rulebooks on YouTube, Suit Up Sully on Twitter. Occasionally I show up on Scoundrels Inc., but realistically not that often. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome, man. And you can find us at First Cut and at First Cut TMO on social media. You can follow me at Squad Leader Ace and RB3.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Director RB3. And I didn't chime in when y'all was talking about the ACOLYTE, but it was a cool episode. It was cool.
Yeah, sorry about that, man. I should have gone to you last.
I talked too much. I'm sorry.
Either way, guys, for the Sabacc the Block crew, we're going to be peacing out. So peace, deuces. Awesome, Sean. Thank you, man.
Is that the sound of the sign that the show's over?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I